The following program contains strong language. Viewer discretion is advised. Oh. Do 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 do. Welcome to the Real Chat Weekly. Do 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 do. Nah, guys, I'm only joking. Got a good one today for you. Game of Thrones special. So we're going to be talking about everything Game of Thrones, and of course, Game of Thrones was everybody's favourite HBO show in recent years anyway. And although it did garner a bit of a controversy towards the end, I think everyone can be in agreement that it had immense production value, it had a great British cast, and it had a storyline that just kept you guessing, kept you on the edge of your seat. You weren't sure who was going to die, who was safe, who was going to end up on the Iron Throne. And of course, as we'll get into this episode, who ended up on the Iron Throne ultimately was quite a divisive, quite a controversial choice from the showrunners anyway, and from the writers. But anyway, enough from me. Enjoy this episode, and on this episode I shall be joined by the wretched and the treasonous House Andrew, and the warrior House Neil. This is your host, Craig. And also, I should have said, I suppose, that this episode will be hosted by Neil. So, please leave us some feedback. Hope you enjoy. And keep watching and keep listening to the good stuff. This is the Real Chat Weekly. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Real Chat Weekly. As you may have noticed, this is not Craig speaking, this is Neil. Don't worry, Craig is still here though, and we are also joined by our good friend Andrew. I was about to say your second name there, but I don't know if you want it. But
No,
I've got...
We'll just call him Andrew the TARDIS.
Sure,
Andrew Tardy.
That.
Andrew Tardy. We'll call you Andrew Tardy.
No, don't call me that.
Anyway, and I got your name right this week at least. You're not Adam.
Yay!
But anyway, without further ado, as it's 10 years since the first episode aired, and also with recent developments of a prequel series, as you'll probably guessed by the title, we are of course talking about everyone's favorite medieval fantasy drama, Game of Thrones. Now, in this episode, of course, there will be major spoilers for both the book and the TV show. So if you're not up to date with that and you don't want to know, this might not be the episode for you. However, if you are just here for the witty banter, then we're more than happy to oblige. And I'd also like, as we'll be discussing all things Game of Thrones, of course, with the graphic nature and the dialogue and whatnot, how it's quite, shall we say, profane. This will be quite a mature episode, maybe, as we will be quoting. So can I just say that adult supervision is required? That's a Django reference, if anyone didn't get that.
That's a good one, Neil.
I was actually practicing that voice before it came on.
Wow, you've put so much effort so much effort into memorizing your lines and getting your lines and your cues. Yes, that's very, very fantastic.
Yeah, but no, for Game of Thrones, we'll just be having a general discussion, talking about our favorite characters, episodes we liked, what we didn't like, our popular fan theories, and basically just why we thought the show was as big as it was overall. So I'm going to start with you, Andrew, putting the first question to you this week.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, when did you start watching Game of Thrones, and can you tell us why? Because am I correct in saying that you were somewhat late to the party?
I was very late to the party. I remember everyone. It was all Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, and I hadn't seen any of them. So times I did feel a bit left out. Other times I pretty much got most of it spoiled. Like I remember going to the cinema and watching trailers for upcoming seasons that had like major spoilers and but no, I always want to get into it. So I got into it a little bit of an unorthodox way, you could say, by being forced to watch the Reigns of Casimir. That
Reigns of
episode.
Castamere.
Yes, that episode.
Right,
first.
right. The Red Wedding.
Red Wedding, yeah.
Yeah,
Red
The
Wedding.
Lannisters send their regards.
that's the one. Memorable. The amount of
Yeah.
times you stabbed me.
Yeah, he's my that's something that me and well, maybe not Neil, but certainly that's something that I used to recreate that scene. I used to be
No,
like,
you did
All
it to
the
me a
time,
lot, practically
all
every
the
day.
time.
I used to go up to Neil and reenact Roose Bolton and say, the Lannisters send their regards. And then I would gently but forcibly thrust my fist into his stomach.
But yeah, that was
The
my
shenanigans
first
we go up to.
Indeed.
I know. No, that was my first episode.
Mhm.
And then a couple of years later, when I moved into my current house, we were in the dark times, the Stone Ages, where we had no internet.
Oh, I
So
can't
the only
imagine.
thing that got me through those 3-4 months was the box set of Game of Thrones seasons 1 to 5.
Wow.
And
How long
then
did that take you?
not too long, like a couple of weeks.
Really? Wow, that's pretty impressive.
And then thankfully when we eventually got internet, season 6 had just finished, so I managed to binge that as well. So season 7 was the first I had watched weekly as it was coming on air.
Oh, wow. What about yourself, Craig?
Well, I was one of the early adopters, you could say. I mean, I joined the show not when it aired originally, but I started watching it, and I remember it quite vividly. I remember there was a sale on at HMV early 2013, and I remember I'd heard rumors and whispers about how this show, Game of Thrones, it was graphic, it was mind-blowing, it was edgy, it had this, it had that, it was amazing, the acting was fantastic, the production value was out of this world, it had Sean Bean, it had a fantastic British cast. I mean, I guess after hearing and being exposed to a lot of that sort of hype, I remember back in that day, the hype was there, but it certainly wasn't the same levels as what it was like later on in the show's runtime, right? So anyway, so I went in and I bought the box set, the first box set. I binge watched it straight away, and I remember watching it and initially being shocked at how violent it was and shocked at how graphic and sexually explicit
I remember
it was.
you talking to me about it.
Yeah, and there was a scene in particular. I won't say the exact dialogue, but there was an exchange of dialogue between Joffrey and Arya.
I know the scene.
And it was just after Arya sort of whacks him with a wooden sword because he's been sorry, he's just cut the butcher's boy. So he's just cut the butcher's boy with a sword, and Arya, who's friends with the butcher's boy, is protecting him, hits him with a sword, and he reacts with all sorts of expletives that are just so they're HBO, definitely HBO level of swear words.
I can imagine.
4-lettered word. Anyway, so I seen that and I was so shocked, but at the same time I couldn't help but watch because that sort of thing doesn't offend me at all. But I don't know what I was expecting going into the show. I guess I was expecting Game of Thrones to be more like Lord of the Rings, like more
I was kind of the same,
more like fantastical and more like that sort of, more like a
mythical sort of fantasy.
Well, yeah, but how would you?
I don't know, like
I
don't know how you describe it.
Yeah, but you know how Lord of the Rings has kind of like a
it's like dark, but not like too dark.
Put it this way, and this sounds silly describing fantasy this way, but it had like an ethereal quality, like an otherworldly quality, Lord of the Rings, right? But Game of Thrones actually seemed as though it was grounded in history.
Reality.
Grounded in, I mean,
well, to a certain extent, without the dragons and zombies,
No.
But from a political sense, it could easily be related to day-to-day life,
I know, but remember, you have to I'm talking about the perspective of just after I've seen the first 2 episodes. There was no reference to dragons or anything. Yes,
All
there
right,
was.
yeah, of course,
That's
yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yes, there was the White Walkers and everything like that. But if you
Mhm.
took out all that fantasy elements, it could well have been a show set in medieval times or something like that.
Yeah, I
Um, So,
absolutely.
so anyway, I'll cut to the chase on this one. I watched the first season, thought it was absolutely fantastic, and
Mhm.
then coincidentally, maybe 2 weeks after I'd watched that, say April, May 2013, the second season box set just got released. So I bought that. It was brand new, bought that, took that home, watched that, and completely blown away by that.
Yeah.
And, we are talking spoilers here. So, again, I'll reiterate Neil's point. If anyone's not seen it, I'm assuming you have because you've watched
Yeah,
up
if you're
to this
watching
point.
this episode, yeah.
But if you haven't, tune out. Okay, come back later. But season 2 ends with Rob Stark in a good position, right?
Mhm.
Neil, you confirm that Rob Stark, he's doing fairly well. He's got his army. He's done.
Yeah.
He's been victorious at a few battles. It's actually Stannis that's been left wounded at the end of season 2. Because remember,
Yeah, Battle of Blackwater, yeah.
yeah, Battle of Blackwater when they used the wildfire.
Mhm.
And that was just amazing, So obviously I was on a high and I was rooting for the Starks. What glorious
Yeah.
time.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. At the start of the season, it was pretty much the Starks you were rooting for.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
basically how I encountered the show. And then from there, it just snowballed. I just
Yeah, just got into
recommended it. Yeah, recommended it to everyone I knew.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for me, I hadn't really heard an awful lot about it before I went to college. At my school, a lot of folk were mainly just talking about Walking Dead. And then when I was at college, folks started talking about Game of Thrones. And I think, I was there 2013. So it'd have been just, I think,
3 seasons?
three. Yeah, it came out in 2011. So it would just be, I think, third season must have just finished. And so I was like, oh, this sounds really, really interesting. And I don't want to be left out of any college conversation. So I went and just watched a few clips on YouTube. The first one I actually saw was at Tyrion and Sansa's wedding, the scene with Joffrey and Tywin.
Oh, yeah.
Where Tyrion says to him after, I think Joffrey's trying to bed Sansa on, or wanting Tyrion to bed Sansa on the wedding night, some sort of weird tradition they do. And then Tyrion slams the fork on the table and is like, "You'll be fucking your own bride with a wooden cock." And then I was like, wow, that's not just because there was so much, like there was humor, but there was also like very dark as well. And I was just like, oh, that's not kind of what I thought the show was. I thought it was, excused expression, but titties and dragons. But no, I was like, man, this is actually looks pretty good. So then I just was watched the first season and just got really into it. And I started like watching it when I was live season 4. So it wasn't until season 4 that I actually watched it when I was on HBO. And I think I watched it first, and then it was Walking Dead second, because I got into Walking Dead around just after Game of Thrones. And I have to say, to be honest, but because I stopped watching Walking Dead after season 8, I think that was the year before the final season of Game of Thrones. And that was just, I mean, that was probably for me the best years of TV, just because when Walking Dead finished, I went straight into the next season of Game of Thrones. So that was a good time to be watching good shows.
It was a good time for TV, but sorry to cut in, Neil, but it was a good
No, you're
time.
all right. Go ahead.
It was a good time for TV back then. I would say 2013 to 2016 was really good for TV. Like you had,
I mean, and everyone was like talking about it as well, so you could speak with so many different people and everyone had a different opinion.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Game of Thrones, you had Breaking Bad was coming to an end that year.
Coming to an end, then
You had Sons of Anarchy was coming to an end that year. Walking Dead was still going strong. And also Game of Thrones
was probably in its peak when I started. Not its peak, sorry, its prime when I started watching it.
Yeah. So there was a lot of good TV back then. And that's relatively when a lot of these shows that I just mentioned were considered. And people were consistently saying, yeah, these shows are really good.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until, I'd say, post 2016 that Game of Thrones in particular, and Walking Dead, but this is the Game of Thrones episode, they started to leave a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths, as I'm sure we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to that point. Why do you think Game of Thrones became so popular? Because normally, like medieval fantasy, I don't know, you kind of associate with it being quite nerdy. Obviously, has a fan base, but just so many people seem to watch it that wouldn't normally watch these kind of shows.
Well, I think that whole nerdy thing is a misnomer. You know, I,
Maybe.
I think in times gone by, this whole, and you know, I said on the Star Wars episode, I don't like the term nerd because it's almost said in a derogatory way. But if we're being honest, I think everyone in some way can identify as a nerd. Everyone's,
Yes.
if you think about it, what's a nerd? Like someone who's passionate about something, right?
Mhm.
So we're all
Yes.
passionate.
I meant no offense.
Well, I'm sure you did, Neil, but I gotta address
But
this
I'll
point.
take offense.
No, 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 I'm not. I'm just addressing this like it's relevant to what we're talking about. I mean, I think traditionally, you're right. Maybe going back 20 years, things like that were like consider Dungeons and Dragons and
Mhm.
fantasy and Lord of the Rings. That's all for nerds and geeks and people who don't look like me and people with, you know, your sort of.
Basically, who
Yeah.
looks like me.
I was thinking of Andrew. Yeah, it's a pity
Just
folk
say
can't
it.
see
Just
him.
say
But
it,
yeah.
guys. Even though it's not a video, it's audio. But like, just
Yeah.
think of a nerd, and then that's me.
Yeah, draw a picture.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think pop culture, things like shows like Game of Thrones and all these other franchises have become such a staple in pop culture and entertainment. And because the internet probably communication, high speed communication, everyone's talking about it all the time.
Mhm.
People are exposed to these things more than they were maybe years ago. I think it's only natural that people are going to start to embrace this whole quote unquote nerd culture type thing more and more. So that's why I think Game of Thrones got so popular was because uh, it had this fantasy element and it had the hard hitting violence and the edgy storylines and the stuff that you wouldn't expect normally to see on TV. I guess. I mean, HBO has been pushing the bar for a long time. I mean, like I've said in previous episodes, HBO's first mega hit was with The Sopranos, and
Yeah.
that was edgy at the time as well. But I guess it was the storylines and sort of the unpredictable nature of Game of Thrones.
I was going to say that unpredictability. You know, I mean, you couldn't go from season to season guessing who was going to die, unless
Well,
of course you read the books. You'd have an idea. But it
exactly.
was
I mean,
always fun being part of those like fan discussions on like forums and whatnot.
yeah.
People listing their top 5 characters that died this season, stuff like that. You know, that was fun.
Well, the thing is, when I started watching it, and Sean Bean was obviously a top billed actor in the show, he's because he
Yeah.
was the biggest star. It came as a I hadn't been exposed to spoilers at that point, so it came
All
to
right.
me naturally when I seen the executioner raising his broadsword
Mhm.
or his executioner sword, and he was about to bring it down. I thought until the last minute, no, something's going to happen. There's going to be an intervention here, or something's going to happen that's going to
Yeah.
stop it. And as soon as that sword struck his neck and his head fell into the basket, or it cuts away, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I was speechless, just like, and I'm sure you're going to mention this as well, Neil, the Bear and the Maiden Fair at the end of the episode when I think that's what the episode. No, no, it's called the Hand. The episode I think when Jamie Lannister loses his hand. Remember the
All right. Yeah.
Yes, the really
Oh,
abrupt
I know
credits.
that was a really good scene.
yeah,
Yeah.
like his hand gets severed and then it just cuts to black, and there's that bizarre sort of rock punky take on the Bear and Maiden Fair.
Oh yeah, you know we're obviously speaking about scores the last couple of weeks, and that's another one I've added to my list. It's just not. It wasn't expected from an episode of Game of Thrones. You know, felt kind of. It didn't feel out of place, but
Yeah,
it was. I liked those. I thought it was quite a nice touch. You know.
I just love that it kind of like it was kind of like a tone killer, wasn't it? It's like, but like
Yeah,
in the best
aye.
way.
You know, you kind of just went along with it.
I think it
Yeah,
was. It was.
exactly. But like going back,
Sorry, Andrew. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, go back to Greg's point as well. I think just one of the things that really got that they did something that I've never seen before, and that's they killed the main character at the end of the first season.
Yeah, aye. You know, I always
I've,
applaud shows for
I've
that.
never seen that before.
Yeah, it must have been one of the early ones to do that.
Yeah. Sorry, Craig, what were you gonna say?
It's all right.
No,
I'll carry on.
I was just going to say that I think that sort of when it cuts to that song, you could argue it was a tone killer, but I think it was meant to be quite jarring. Like this
Yeah, that's one thing.
this totally disturbing thing has just happened, and you never seen it coming. Jamie Lannister is known as a proven swordsman, and he's known for his talent. Then all of a sudden he gets his hand cut off. The viewers like visibly like, oh my god, what just happened? And then to add to that confusion of what's going on, they play this do 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 do, you know.
Yeah, no, it's
I
brilliant.
think it works really well.
It does, yeah. No, I just also wanted to talk about, in Game of Thrones, there's so many different characters, good, bad, sometimes that sort of twists around, you don't really know who the actual protagonists are. I just wanted to ask you, Andrew, first of all, who your favorite character was and why.
Oh, good question. It changed all the time, and they kept dying as well. I think for the longest time it was Tyrion.
Right, yeah.
Just because I don't know, I always agreed with what he was saying, to be honest. I always was on his side. I was always rooting for him, especially when a lot of really bad stuff with his family, how he was being treated, happened to him. Like when he was facing his dad.
Oh god, yeah, when he was on was it the privy he called it?
Yeah, he was like,
what was the line again?
No, he says something like, it's like something like, this is just like you embarrassing your father in the privy.
It's just lines like that,
And then he's like, now let's go into my study. And then Tyrion's like, she's in there. And then Lannister's like, what, are you afraid of a dead hole? And then that's when he shoots the bolt, the first arrow. So as soon as Tyrion hears Tywin referring to her again as a whore, which pisses him off, first of all, it annoys him because clearly Tyrion loved her. And I guess, he hears that, and then that's when he shoots the first arrow. And that was another scene that came as quite a shock,
Yeah, what about you, Craig? Who was your favorite character?
Favorite character of the whole show?
Or you can pick multiple ones, because obviously for me it changed quite often, to be honest with
you. Yeah, well, I would say for the first few seasons, my favorite character was Bronn, because he had a lot of funny lines and he was such a badass. Like,
my favorite episode of him was Blackwater, of him and the Hound.
Yeah, right. When the Hound looks at him and says, "You think you're a hard man," and then Bronn says, "Think I know it." That was so good.
Yeah.
But the first scene with Bronn when he fights for Tyrion, remember it?
Oh yeah. Was it the Veil? It's called.
Yeah, the Veil, and then he fights the knight. He kills him, and then he throws him through the moon door. I thought that was just so badass. So I would say Bronn for the first few seasons.
Yeah.
I have to say, I kind of ashamed to admit this, but I thought that Roose Bolton was a bit of a badass as well.
No, he certainly had a demeanor. Yeah.
He had like quite a cool like on-screen presence, like fairly intimidating. But his voice, he had quite a distinctive voice as well. Like there was one scene that I thought was quite iconic looking back on it now, when Robb Stark is in his tent with his generals and he's just received word that Winterfell's been taken by Theon Greyjoy and the Greyjoy forces, right? So Robb Stark's like, why would Theon do this? And then Roose says, because the Greyjoys are treasonous whores.
So many iconic lines,
and then he says, sorry, I'll cut to the chase on this one. He says, Your Grace, let me send word to my bastard Ramsay. He will retake Winterfell with a skeleton crew.
And boy, he did.
Oh yeah. Ramsay was something else. Iwan Rion. So many good actors,
Yeah.
Could be naming them all day. But now for me, it was probably Jaime Lannister, I'd say. Certainly by the end, from maybe season 3 onwards.
I think
certainly Jaime Lannister. He had my favorite character development, at least, until I wasn't too pleased with season 8, which we'll talk about in greater detail soon enough. I just thought, no, not necessarily. I could see that happening, but I just felt it was too quick, too abrupt.
I totally agree with you, Neil. He had, out of most of the characters, I think he had one of the best, if not the best, character arc, because like a traditional character arc, you see the character going through something of an evolution. You know, they're progressing. They change as a person throughout the show. You know, they either get better or they get worse. Or they go full circle. So when the show started, Jaime Lannister was a total bastard, right? He was smug, arrogant, and just
pushed a boy out a window.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I mean, that speaks for itself. So he pushed a young Bran Stark out a window, you know. So he's
canoodling with his sister, I might add.
Exactly, yeah. So
Game of Thrones, everyone.
Yeah, depraved and just he wasn't a good character. But then as the show progresses, and I actually think the turning point for that was the pivotal moment in his arc was losing his hand.
Definitely.
As soon as he lost his hand, that made him realize, wait a minute, you know, the world doesn't revolve around me. You know, I've lost this hand. There's people that are worse off than me. And also meeting Brienne of Tarth, that their interaction and their sort of chemistry that they had with each other also probably helped them develop as a character.
It really
especially
did
in the pool. The scene in the pool with them was
that was a great scene.
And then when he returns to King's Landing, eventually after losing his hand,
Star season 4.
Yeah, and then he walks into the city gates as though he's just some commoner, some peasant, and then some local merchant like walks past him, says "out of the way" or something like that. You know, he speaks to him like he's just some randomer. If that was the Jaime from season 1, I think Jaime would have said, "I'm a Lannister," or he would have corrected him or something and reminded him who he was. But
or they'd probably just killed him, to be honest.
Well, probably, yeah. I mean, let's not forget there's that crazy scene halfway through season 1 when they're fighting outside Littlefinger's brothel, and he kills Sean Bean's.
Was it Yori? Was that his name?
Is like right hand man.
Yeah,
he like stabs him through the face or something.
Through the eye.
So total bastard. But then as the show went on, he became more redeemed. Towards the end of the show, there was glimpses of his sort of being cold again. Like you remember at the end of, was it? It might have even been into season 8 or season 7. Remember when they were trying to catch the blackfish and they were in that siege outside that city?
Right, yeah. That was season 6.
Yeah, and
season 6.
And he says to that is Edmund. He says
Edmure Tully, was it?
Edmure Tully. He says to him, he like threatens to catapult his infant son and his wife over into the city or something like that, just to save Cersei or something like that. You know, so
I don't know. I have a feeling that might have been a bluff, but then again, you know, you've seen what he did for Cersei, so can't really put it past him.
Exactly.
But you got to give a shout out to Tobias Menzies, who played Edmure Tully as well. I thought they really underused him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, after watching through the show again recently, I never really appreciated his performance, but although admittedly he wasn't in it that much.
No, he didn't have a real significant part.
But yeah, one of those things, I guess. What about you, Andrew? Andrew, which character arc was your favorite?
Oh, I'm trying to think, to be honest.
Surely it wasn't Bran's, because that was the most boring character arc.
Yeah, well, I actually have some points on Bran that I think I'd like to add. Maybe once we get into discussing season 8.
Of course.
Right. Okay. Well, before we get there, I'll be honest. The Three-Eyed Raven, that was probably the only plot line I was bored by.
Well, for me, the Sand Snakes was.
Oh God, they were letdown.
Tell you what, I think was that season 5, because I think that was the first storyline that just didn't do anything for me, and I know a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, season 5 was a bit of a letdown.
It wasn't great. It wasn't until Hard Home I thought that really kicked on.
Yes.
You mentioned the Sand Snakes, Neil, right? And the funny thing about that one is HBO released all of these like hype videos, like showing the pre-production and behind the scenes stuff, and they showed character videos for the Martells, or the sort of the what are they called, the Sand Snakes, was it?
The Sand Snakes, yeah, they're like Martell's
the three daughters,
or something like that.
Yeah, the bastard daughters and the mother, sorry, his like partner. So anyway, it was showing you them, and it was showcasing their weapons and their fighting style, and it was also
I remember that, yeah.
You know, and yes, they did have some satisfying fighting scenes and everything, but you're right. I just think that particular storyline wasn't really one that took me anywhere. And same with sorry to hijack sort of Andrew's moment in the spotlight speaking. I'll put it back to you in a minute, Andrew, but same with that moment with Aya when she was doing oysters, clams, and cockles. Yeah, that was just terrible.
Aya and Bravos, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was boring. But that's just my
opinion. It was after she killed who's the really vile guard.
Yeah, I know.
Meryn Trant.
Meryn
fucking Trant. Yeah, Andrew, you're telling us about your favorite character arc.
Another character arc that I think we could probably talk about is Sansa, because at the beginning of season 1, she's this naive girl dreaming of Prince Charming, and well, throughout the show, she learns how to play the Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
With the help of Littlefinger, might I add.
Yeah, she learns how to be more cunning and ruthless.
There's a lot of strong, badass female characters in that show. You know, I mean, you think of Cersei, obviously. I mean, doesn't take any shit from anyone, really.
Marjorie was very smart in a very sort of low-key manner.
She was very
manipulative things. You know?
Yeah, she was like a strategist. Like
she played Tommen very well.
Oh yeah, I would say she manipulated a lot of people, but she was very cunning. So Cersei, Marjorie, what's
I'll tell you what,
Diana Rigg. Yeah,
Olenna Tyrell, Diana Rigg. You know, she's beats them all. You know,
yeah,
probably the most badass character throughout the whole show. I think you have to give it to her. I mean,
probably.
Man, she had so little scenes, but every scene she was in, you were just so captivated by her performance. She was great, you know.
Well, remember, it was funny in that scene when Jaime they've sort of overtaken, the Lannister forces have sort of captured Highgarden.
Highgarden, yeah.
Jaime walks into sort of the sort of her quarters or living quarters or whatever, and she's sitting at a table, and he goes over and he offers her this like painless poison just to end her life quickly, because Cersei demanded that he drags her back to King's Landing for her to be killed in a horrific way, probably. But anyway, her sort of last words were like about Joffrey, and she refers to him as Joffrey always was a cunt, was he? Not really.
She said what we all thought.
Aye, exactly.
But coming out of Diana Rigg's mouth, it was quite shocking to hear. You know.
Yeah, I know, and obviously, as we were talking about with Helen McCrory last week, Diana Rigg unfortunately passed away. I think it was a few years ago now, a couple of years ago, not that long actually.
2 or 3 years ago, I think it was. Yeah.
Or was it even shorter than that? Was it only last year?
Yeah,
it might have been last year. Yeah. Actually, it might have been. Yeah, last year. Oh shit.
A major episode. Generally, it was episode 9. I think the one exception was maybe episode 8, Hard Home.
Guys, sorry, can I just cut in? My internet connection went there, so none of the past 2 minutes of whatever you were saying was recorded, unfortunately. So,
all right, okay.
Because we have to, that's something that I should have pointed out, that although I am recording, and you guys are still speaking, it only picks up what's coming through on my end.
All right. Okay.
Right.
So I
Okay.
think actually what might be a good idea is going forward to avoid connection issues. If all of us press record, and
Can we
then
do that?
or maybe not. Maybe if it's because it's me hosting.
Well, I can stop video. I don't want to really click that. Just in
Record.
case.
Yeah. No, I need to. Please ask the host.
No,
to
it
give
does
you
say
permission.
record. Yeah.
Yeah, you
can
must
give
be
us
able to.
permission.
You must be able to, because people will be like doing lectures and stuff on Zoom.
Yeah. Aye.
So is it okay if we rewind a wee bit and
Sure. Where did it cut out?
just after we were trying to determine when Diana Rigg passed away?
Yeah.
All
so
right.
10th of September last year.
Right. So Neil, you okay to go again?
Yeah.
I mean, we could move on to another topic. It's up to you.
Yeah, I just started talking about like why it was so popular again, but I was talking about like the scale of it, like the battles and stuff like that.
Cool.
Totally awesome battles.
There's gonna be totally awesome battles. Right. In 3, 2. This is just for editing purposes. 3, 2, 1. Action.
Yeah, I want to bring it back to what topic we were talking about before about the popularity of it. I think another reason is the epic scale of some of the episodes, particularly the sort of big battles they had, like Blackwater, Hardhome, Battle of the Bastards. Generally around episode 9, I think Hardhome, and it's just a sort of epicness we hadn't really seen on TV before. No.
I think
and the budget sort of just shot up through each season.
Yeah, Game of Thrones is the show that I think proved that when utilized well, television can stand shoulder to shoulder with
definitely.
film. In fact, at times, maybe it could be better and from a storytelling perspective.
Yeah, I think it's got the benefits of that just purely on a character basis. You know how you can, it's easier to tell a character story through different episodes, because say episodes like an hour each, 10 episodes,
In fact, was George R. R. Martin, he was offered film deals, wasn't he? So before the show, he was said, he was offered, maybe we can make a movie trilogy of Game of Thrones. And he said, nah, it's got to be a series. I thought it was rejected.
Maybe I heard that wrong. Or no, tell you what, I might be thinking of Walking Dead, because I think HBO rejected. No, Walking Dead rejected HBO or something like that. Or sorry, no, I got that completely wrong. I think it was AMC rejected Game of Thrones. I might be getting muddled up.
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot we need to fact check right now.
Think about that. But no, so someone rejected someone and someone's got pissed off. That's all I know.
Yes, and someone became successful.
No, I have a funny feeling AMC might have rejected Game of Thrones.
Who knows? But regardless, it's always the case in production and filmmaking that there's always going to be disputes. I mean, the Sony Marvel dispute over Spider-Man, that's just one example. But these things are always going to happen. But anyway, Neil, back to your point about your original.
Just, they were so like memorable. When you think of Game of Thrones, I automatically think of episodes like Battle of the Bastards and Hardhome.
Yeah, they kind of reminded me of the same sort of epicness as the likes of the Battle of Helm's Deep, or maybe not
like the scene in Battle of the Bastards when like Littlefinger brings in the Knights of the Vale. And they're all come charging in, with Sansa as well.
Yeah, that actually,
just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, definitely. And that scene, it's what I would imagine would be very realistic. That scene where Jon Snow is, they're sort of encircled.
They're getting crushed by the shields. They've got a formation, and they're sort of pushing them in, forcing them in.
So the Bolton forces are sort of forcing them in because they're in like a shield and pike formation, right?
Yeah,
they're closing them in. They're getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And obviously, just as what I would imagine medieval warfare would have been like, the soldiers there's people getting trampled, all hell's going on, confusion, and then you see it from Jon Snow's point of view, where he's like, he's suffocating, he's getting smothered by these people, and he's fighting to get to the top. And then there's that crane shot that sort of elevates up, and you see this just massive bodies.
That's such a good episode. One of my favorite shots is when the army is charging towards Jon Snow, and he's taking out his
Oh,
swords.
yeah,
Like
just
he's going to
after
kick off
Rickon's death,
his
yeah.
whole army by himself.
That was in
and
all the
they
trailers.
used a lot of those shots on, as Craig was saying, trailers. And if you're advertising Game of Thrones and Sky Atlantic in the cinema, that's the one shot they always show.
Exactly.
But you can see why it's
Yeah,
spectacular,
very-
you know, and it just sort of
That's
shows
a-
the epic scale as we were talking about.
That's a hero shot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
You think of all these trailers for TV shows and films in a similar sort of vein, especially fantasy stuff. There's always a hero
Mhm.
shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know,
It's
where
the
it's-
moneymaker
it
shot.
is. Yeah,
isn't
you're
it?
bang on, Andrew. It's what the
Yeah.
moneymaker shot, as you said.
Exactly. You know, you've got the.
But back to sorry, Craig. I was just gonna. Well, sorry, what were you gonna say? You go ahead.
Oh no, sorry, I'm going off my tangent. You take us back.
No, I was just going to go back to Battle of the Bastards and saying how that was one of the episodes I was actually really nervous watching because a character I've not mentioned yet was Tormund Giantsbane in terms of like character development, how he was just sort of a wildling thug.
Yeah.
Not, I suppose thug's not really the right word, but lackey maybe. And then, I think in season 5, he sort of forms a friendship with Jon Snow and then they sort of have this brotherly bond till the end of the season. And he actually ends up surviving the season, which I was surprised about. I thought he was going to go at some point. And in Battle of the Bastards, I thought he was.
He survives the series, yeah.
Yeah, he was definitely one of my favorite characters. And again, to do with the character arc, I thought it was one of the ones that was handled right. And he got a good ending.
One of the few.
One of the few, yeah. Not everyone made it out.
Hardhome's my favorite episode.
Hardhome, aye. Because it's got the girl in it. What's her name? The wildling girl. Is it? It's
Secret?
like, no, it's not Egret. It's
She was only in one episode. Yeah, she plays one of the sort of the. I guess you could call them council members. I know they're not council member, but she plays one of the decision makers in the wildling camp, and
Corsi's her name.
That's the one.
And she's played by Brigitte Hjort Sorensen, Danish actress, who's only in one episode. I hope I got that name right. But there's a lot of talent comes from Iceland and the Scandinavian nations, so shout out to them.
Yeah. Well, when they were setting her character up, I thought she was going to be in a few episodes, but just like in typical Game of Thrones fashion, they get really good performers to come in and play these roles, and you think, oh, right, well, this is going to be a new character, and then no, you're joking. They're going to be dead by the time the credits roll. And sure enough, there's that haunting scene where the Night King raises them all from the dead, and
that's brilliant. That
her distorted corpse like rises up, and you can see her blue eyes, and it's quite shocking.
Yeah, but as you're saying, I thought season 5 overall was a bit weak.
Yeah, I can agree.
It just didn't quite. I can't really remember what else happened other than Hardhome and the Sand Snakes.
I think
Tyrion and Jorah sort of formed a wee alliance and made their way to Daenerys. That was all right.
I think just watching it, because I was binging it, I kind of found it a little bit hard to keep track on everyone's storylines. I thought there was lots and lots of characters, lots of storylines I had to keep track on. I kept forgetting.
And for me personally, I think that was the first season where Varys's character kind of went downhill. Nothing to do with Conleth Hill, who I thought gave a fantastic performance throughout. I just thought the writers had no idea. I don't know where he was in the book, but I just felt the writers had no idea what to do with him once he left King's Landing. And that sort of relationship he had with Littlefinger, that sort of was an element of the show I really missed. I was kind of hoping we'd see them together again, but alas, the writers had other ideas, unfortunately.
Yeah. And they did a moment with Ramsay and Sansa, which was a bit unnecessary, I found.
Yeah. I mean, I can kind of understand it, but at the same time, it wasn't.
The thing is, the audience already hated Ramsay enough. I mean, there was already enough reasons to hate him. So I don't know if that's scene that you're on about, which was really hard to watch. And
I think it was.
I don't know if it was in the books or not, but
I don't think so.
If it was inserted and made up just for the show, I think
that's why people were pretty outraged by it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, because it wasn't in the books.
That's what I'm meaning. Like, I do think that I agree with Andrew. I do think it was unnecessary to show that because, like I say, there'd been heaps of instances up to that point for the audience to already hate him. We didn't need another excuse to hate him.
Yeah.
And Sansa's character was kind of on the way up at that point. She was, she dyed her hair black, I think, and she kind of was learning from Littlefinger while playing her own game, and that kind of diminished that in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I mean, speaking about performances and speaking about, and this is how well cast that show was, in my opinion. When I watched the pilot episode for the first season, the actor that plays the Night's Watch guy on the horse at the very first scene when him and the two other guys are going beyond the wall, remember that, Neil?
Oh, yeah.
His performance was, I don't know if it was just me, and at the time, just thinking back on it, but his performance was fairly good. I remember thinking, all right, okay, well, this guy must be like one of the main characters. But he was killed. He was killed off screen.
Yeah, I guess his head chopped off next scene, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, something like that. And then there was a few others.
I think it was Ned Stark executed him. Is that the guy you're talking about?
No. It was the proper like Night's Watch.
Oh, right. I see what you mean.
Yeah. But there was a few roles like that were played really well. It was the same with that sort of Greyjoy lackey that sort of was Theon's like underling. Remember when Theon takes the ship to capture Winterfell? There's this guy.
Oh yeah.
He's got I don't know if he's got a glass eye or something in the show, but he's got a very distinctive face.
Yeah, I think I know the guy you mean.
His character is really menacing, and you do think, all right, well, okay, but he's going to be a sort of more permanent fixture on the show.
Was that Ralph Ineson?
Yeah, well, it's the guy that sounds a dead ringer for
He's got a really deep voice.
Yeah, it sounds dead ringer for Sean Bean, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's Ralph Ineson. He's been in loads of things.
He actually does the voiceover for a few adverts on TV,
No, I've seen him loads of times. He's a good actor.
Yeah, really good cast show. And
you know what you've reminded me of, though. Sorry to interject, but going back to character development, Theon Greyjoy. I can.
I know. He was one that got put through the ringer as well, like most of them.
Although there is one gripe I have with him, and that's how sudden he makes his decision to change his allegiance from Robb to the Greyjoys. Because. Just give me a minute to go through this, because I'm trying to remember the timeline of events, because it has been it has been a while since I watched the show. So if I remember right, he is going over to the Iron Islands to try and canvass support for Robb Stark's efforts to become king, right? So he's fully in the camp of Robb Stark, and there's even that scene when Robb and his bannermen are sitting around the table, and Theon's like one of the first guys to get up and say, the king in the north, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So he declares his allegiance to Robb, and then after speaking to, obviously he encounters his sister, but after speaking to, I can't remember his name, the Greyjoy guy, the long-haired guy, what's his name again?
Balon, was it?
Balon, yeah. After speaking to Balon, his biological father, although he never grew up with him, he was like pretty much orphaned by Ned Stark.
Yeah.
So this father, who he hardly knows, and he's hardly had any interaction with, manages to sway him to the Greyjoys again. And then all of a sudden, Theon decides, right, you know what, to try and prove myself with my father, Greyjoy, Balon, I'm going to go and take my forces and capture Winterfell. And on top of that, I'm going to kill a bunch of the people at Winterfell. And I'm going to do all this stuff that I can never come back from.
Because he killed 2 innocent farm boys, if I recall.
Yeah, he did. And then he killed
Sir Scottish actor.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
I can't mind his name. There was Maester Aemon, who I think Ralph Ineson's character stabbed with a spear.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Maester. No, that's the Night's Watch guy. It's such a long time since I've seen it. It's annoying because I've got his face in my head.
No, but you know who I mean. It was the
I know what you mean.
The Night guy who was loyal to the Starks.
Yeah. I know.
But regardless, you know the scene. Anyway, so
Sir Roderick. Sir Roderick,
that's the one. So he beheads him in quite a brutal way. And then by the end of the episode, you realize, oh shit, Theon's like completely lost the plot.
Yeah, now that you mention it, it was quite sudden. To be honest, I didn't really notice it when I was watching it. When I watched it again, because after this conversation, that's kind of got me in the mood for watching it again. It's just I may well look at it in a different way.
Maybe,
but I certainly want to talk about season 8, because obviously that's the most recent one, the last one, and to say it was decisive is a bit of an understatement.
Divisive.
There's obviously been a lot of interviews and obviously other podcasts and discussions on YouTube and whatnot. I've seen a few completely slating it, but we'll try and be obviously don't need to be like that. So maybe try and have a bit of a professional opinion on it.
Try and be sort of fair. I mean, let's just look at it.
Yeah, because there is a lot of negativity about it, and some of it's fair, some of it's a wee bit
constructive criticism. Think of it like that. Not hate. Because at the end of the day, let's just be honest. I'm sure most people will agree with this, that the final season of Game of Thrones felt, and it was evidently rushed, right?
Definitely.
The events of the last season could easily have been drawn out to be 2 or 3 seasons more. You know, maybe
I'd say definitely at least 2 of 10 episodes.
Yeah. So
like, it's one of the very few where I actually think it finished too early. It could have gone on more, whereas there's other shows I think could have done with being less, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of shows over the last 20 years that you can think of that fans have come out and said the show's lasted too long, it needs to end, or this show's overstayed its welcome.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones was one of those shows that fans wanted it to go on, but the showrunners, because they, at the time, David Benioff and Vice, was it? They had plans at the time for being the showrunners for a Star Wars show, right? So it almost seemed, or it might have been a Star Wars show, it might have been Star Wars films, but regardless, it was Star Wars something. Anyway, so they were rushing the last season out, and it was obvious because even its own record, I mean, you go and look up George R. R. Martin, it was even in talks like saying, oh no, we can still, because the books haven't even ended yet. So they were still saying, oh no, we can still go on for another season or two, another 2 seasons.
Yeah.
But the showrunners and just,
I think he said that they could have went to 11 seasons.
Definitely. For me, the biggest disappointment, I don't know about you guys, was the Night King and the White Walkers. I just thought, because they're really the first characters we see, the first threat definitely we see. For me, they were the overall arching villains. You know, not Cersei. I mean, I think the Iron Throne, although that was a big part of it, could have easily been done, say, in season 8, and then do the invasion of the White Walkers in season 9, and just have it a bit more drawn out, because they just came and went, and that was what they're building up to. Winter is coming was the motto throughout the whole season, and for me, just the way it ended was so anticlimactic.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I think, Neil, and I might be reading too deeply into it, but what they might have been wanting to show there is they were maybe trying to be, it was maybe supposed to be not metaphorical, but it was maybe trying to show the true villain or the true danger is humans. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, you've got a world full of all this fantasy, fantastical, mythical creatures, dragons, and all sorts of things like. But at the end of the day, it comes down to it. The real evil is your fellow human. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why, and again, I may be speaking a lot of rubbish, probably am, but maybe that's why they decided, right, no, the true villain of the show is going to be Cersei, or the true villain of the show.
Or of course, Daenerys.
Or Daenerys, yeah, you could look at that.
I was rooting for the Lannisters by the end, because Daenerys started to really annoy me.
I was still rooting for Stannis Baratheon. I'm joking.
Stannis Baratheon.
He was long dead at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Aye. I remember those fan
Wait, the
theories
true
going to speak.
people.
Sorry, Andrew, to speak about Stannis for a bit. I remember his fan
Sorry.
theories going around saying because we didn't actually see Brienne like
Kill
kill
him.
him with the sword, like you just see her swing it. There's loads of fan theories going around before season 6 saying, "Oh, he's still alive."
Well,
You know, if we didn't see him die on screen, he's not really dead. And I was like,
yeah. Well, sorry,
know.
sorry. I'll throw it over to you, Andrew, in a minute just to say your piece. But just while we're on this point, before it leaves my mind, when I was in New York, I don't know if it still exists, but it had this totally awesome shop.
Totally awesome.
It had this totally awesome shop, the HBO store. Right, it's fairly close to Times Square, and in the HBO store they had merchandise related to all these HBO brands like Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, Game of Thrones, True Blood, all these types of things. And obviously I bought Sopranos stuff, but I also bought Game of Thrones stuff. So I went out of my way because they had merchandise for almost every house. So they had stuff for Lannisters, Starks, Greyjoys, Baratheon. So I decided, right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy Stannis Baratheon t-shirt because his sigil's quite cool, you know, the heart with the crown and the stag. So I thought that was quite cool. But I also bought, and I'm going to get slated for this, but I also bought I have a House Bolton t-shirt as well, you know, with a flayed man. This was prior to Ramsay's disgusting acts. This was just
So I'm sure no one would have judged you.
But yeah, that's just my little sort of. I always rooted for the houses that weren't like the ones that everyone was going on about. Like everyone was going on
Mormont was a very good Bear Island. What's their motto? Here we stand, is it?
That's something like that, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember Jorah Mormont saying that to Viserys Targaryen in one of the early episodes, where I think Viserys was challenging him, and I think it was Viserys trying to steal the dragon egg, and then he's like talking about Daenerys, and then Viserys says to Jorah, and yet here you stand, and Jorah's like, and yet here I stand. And it's pretty badass. Got chills.
Yeah, and also remember Clegane. The Clegane sigil was it had like a dog or something on it. I think like a two-headed dog or something like that. That was pretty cool. But anyway, sorry, Andrew, going over to you. You had something to say, didn't you?
Yeah, just to say that I think like the White Walkers, they were the physical threats, but I guess going into your point, Craig, metaphorically, the threat was the Iron Throne. It was metaphorically.
Andrew's just doing hand movements now for people who can't see it.
Yeah. Well, Craig was. So.
Insert pretentious hand movements here.
Yeah.
See, metaphorically speaking, it meant this, and you know, this was symbolic of this, and no, it wasn't. It was just the fucking. It didn't mean anything. It was just there. Sorry, Andrew.
Well, the thing is that that's an interesting point you raised, Craig, because I know that the showrunners. I remember reading an interview where they said that themes are for 8th grade school reports. No one actually cares about themes in real life writing, and it's something I disagree with. But I think it's something that kind of showed at the end.
If it's done well, I think it's really good, and if it's done subtly, I think it's really good. But if it's done on the nose and it's blatant and it's obvious that they're trying to make a statement, then I don't think it works well. But that's just my opinion.
But in terms of season 8, so I think for me it was this whole idea of subverting expectations. It was what we expected. So we would expect, like for me, I was expecting Jon Snow and the Night King to go head on heads, and it didn't happen.
No, I mean, those Arya just came out of nowhere, and
and I'm not saying
it was so anticlimactic.
Yeah, it's like I'm not saying that Jon should have killed the Night King. In fact, it's probably a good thing that he didn't. But the fact that they did Arya for some reason. Whereas I don't know if it was Jaime that killed the Night King.
That'd have been like full circle, you know?
Yeah.
Although, to that point, if you flash back to season 2 or 3, the Red Woman actually says to Arya, "You will close many eyes."
Oh,
she lists she lists all the color of eyes that she's going to close, implying that she's going to kill them. And she says,
Blue Eyes was one of them, was it?
Blue eyes, which at the time when they originally wrote that line, again, I don't know if it's in the books because I've not read them, but when they wrote that line, they might not have been thinking it could be interpreted as being or it could be convenient as being the Night King. Could have been anyone.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I do think that was anticlimactic. I thought that one of the theories that I heard that was fantastic, and they should have went with this one, in my opinion, was that up until the point where Bran, remember that scene when Bran was with the Three-Eyed Raven and he sort of projects himself beside the White Walker, and the Night King is there with his troops.
Is it that touches them on the hand?
So the Night Walker touches him on the wrist, and then he goes, ah! And then, so what happens after that is, although this was just him projecting himself, the sort of effect of the Night King's touch has actually transferred onto his physical body. I thought it would have been cool if that was the Night King transferring himself into Bran.
Yeah, that was a major theory. I was still holding out hope for that until the very last episode.
Yeah, and then as the Night King and the White Walkers are walking up to Bran in that episode, when the White Walkers, when they attack Winterfell, when the White Walkers and the Night King are walking up to Bran, they walk up, they stop. The audience is like, what's going to happen? They kneel down as if they're sort of what's the word? Paying their respects to him, as though they're like he's the Night King himself.
Yeah.
And this whole time, Bran has actually been the Night King.
Aye, and that would have given him a much better character arc, in my opinion, than the Three-Eyed Raven.
Yeah.
But on the subject of Bran, yeah, well, on that subject, I actually don't mind the thought of him being on the Iron Throne. I'll be perfectly honest, because if I go back to the first season, you'll be quite amazed at how big of a role he actually played in the first season and how important he was laid out to be, especially that first master pushes him out the window after he sees him with Cersei. Exactly, the start of the War of the Five Kings. Excuse me. And I was at that point, you'd be like, I could see Bran being on the throne at that point, and I think it does make sense to be a Stark. For what does not make sense to me is the Three-Eyed Raven. Like, what was the whole point in that? Like, and him saying that he has no interest in being king, and he's so cold and that. Then they end up calling him Bran the Broken. And like, but he said he's not Bran Stark anymore. That's my only gripe with it. But if you're talking about Bran Stark,
everyone loves a story, right?
Yeah. But you're talking about an actual Stark on the Iron Throne, it makes most sense to be Bran. But with the Three-Eyed Raven plot, I kind of pretended that didn't happen, and I was actually disappointed that the Night King theory didn't come true, because I actually really like that. But what's your guys' thoughts on Bran anyway, and who would you have wanted to see on the Iron Throne?
Well, I think I'm not happy that it was Bran. I think there were characters in the show that would have been better as being the ruler, because I just got fed up with Bran's storyline with the Three-Eyed Raven and how he was
it was quite boring. And he disappeared for a season as well.
When Bran became the Three-Eyed Raven and he sort of became detached and sort of indifferent to what was going on, then he says, I'm not Bran, I'm the Three-Eyed Raven. And it's so
he's sort of monotone,
he's so monotone and lifeless. I just hated it. I thought it was so boring. That just my opinion. So
I agree.
And again, that's not Isaac Hempstead Wright's fault. That's the writing, because you can't make that character any more interesting,
Yeah, well, again, and it could never have been, if you're saying it should have been a Stark on the throne, or it was always going to be a Stark.
I just say it made sense, not necessarily it was going to destiny.
I know what you said. And I'm just so. If it made sense for a Stark, which I agree it does, because that brings the show sort of back to the Starks. It would never have been Jon Snow, because he's a Targaryen.
And also, they're kind of been too obvious, and again, anticlimactic for me anyway.
Yeah, I think if there was any of the Starks that were going to be, I suppose she's not really a Stark, she's a Baratheon, it would have been Sansa.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. What about Rickon? Everyone forgets about Rickon.
Thought he died.
That's what I'm saying here. Just because he forgot the zigzag. I mean, Jesus Christ, just running a zigzag and he'd still be alive.
I thought you got some acupuncture with a hail of arrows.
But we've not really spoken much about Daenerys, have we, at all?
No, we're not. To be honest, there's so many Game of Thrones characters. We've
But that
not
was
touched on half of
really,
them.
like when it comes to season 8, her fall to the dark side, that's proved to be the most divisive plot line.
I just thought, again, it was just too quick.
too
I mean, I
harsh,
could
yeah.
always see that happening. You got glimpses of it throughout the seasons, but then it's just so quickly after the long night.
Yeah.
What irritated me was that season 8, when they did the whole fall to the dark side, I don't have an issue with her becoming evil. It's the fact that they try to reframe heroic slaves, moments that cinematography and the language of film wise was framed as heroic, only to be told like, yeah, see, we were rooting for her and really she was evil,
Yeah.
and we should have saw this coming. Like, yeah, but no, that's not visually what the show told us.
It's a bit misleading, isn't it?
Again, I think that's
Yeah.
supposed to be back to what you were saying, Andrew, about subverting expectations. I mean, if you go back and watch the show,
Mhm.
there are subtle hints here and there that she would eventually sort of be subject to her ancestors' ailments of eventually sort of losing her grip on reality. Because you remember there's a line in season 1 or season 2 when it's like, what the gods say, whenever a Targaryen is born, they flip a coin and it determines whether that Targaryen
Yeah.
is going to be crazy or going to be normal. So I think the signs were
Yeah.
always there, because I think everyone thought, like, Viserys,
But-
he was the crazy one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it
sorry,
was like as soon as Daenerys arrived in Winterfell, it was like she's the Mad Queen. That she's hasn't done anything. Well, the thing is with Game of Thrones is that the last season we were just talking about how divisive it was and how creative choices we didn't really agree with. And it's unfortunate because of that. A lot of people feel that they can't go back and rewatch it because of everything that happened in season 8. I really hope that this episode shows that Game of Thrones is still a good show, even though if you thought that it felt short of the last hurdle, it's still a good show. It still has amazing characters and great scenes and seasons. And yeah, I still think it is worth a rewatch. And I don't think that last season should really affect, maybe it will in your mind, but I don't think it should affect your enjoyment of the whole show.
Yeah. What about you, Craig? Any final thoughts?
Well, I think just to address Andrew's point there, that I agree with him. I mean, Game of Thrones, the production value and the cast and crew have done a fantastic job, and it was just unfortunate that some of the decisions. I don't know who sort of who ought to get the blame the most for the final season, the way it turned out. The showrunners, I guess, or some of these decision makers higher up. I think it's unfortunate that the show ended that way and it ended so abruptly, and it did seem quite rushed. However, as Andrew said, that shouldn't detract from the value of the show, and it shouldn't detract from the fact that it is a good show at the end of the day. And in my opinion, I was initially in the camp when after watching the show and the final season after finishing it, and even up until recently, I thought that because the final season left such a sour taste in my mouth, it kind of sullied the experience for me a wee bit, and it kind of did put me in the mindset of thinking, now I can't go back and watch the first season. I can't go back and watch the show, much like the way Walking Dead has turned out.
Yeah, I kind of see your point. Yeah.
Knowing what I know now and knowing where the characters end up and knowing certain story arcs and knowing all that sort of thing. And again, I know this is my own sort of thing that I need to get over. And I'm sure there's audience members out there as well who have felt like this. With all this added information, how can I go back and watch the show and think, oh yeah, I'm rooting for XYZ. I'm rooting for this
Mhm.
character. I'm rooting for that character.
I'm rooting for Daenerys. I'm rooting for Jon Snow.
Yeah. Rooting for Bran.
Just like, and I'll keep this brief reference to Walking Dead because there might even be a Walking Dead episode with me and Neil sometime.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
It's the same with Walking Dead. How can I go back and watch Walking Dead and get excited and be enthusiastic for the characters when up to season 9 or 10, maybe one character from the first season still is on the show?
Two.
Two of the original cast members from the first show are still there. And there's crucial, pivotal characters that are crucial to the show are gone. So how can I go back and enjoy the show up to the current time?
Yeah,
But
it's hard.
again, audience, please don't slate me for that because I do acknowledge that that isn't a good way of thinking. And I guess if you were going to think like that about every show, you wouldn't rewatch anything, because let's be honest here.
Sure.
Every show has its up moments and its down moments. Even, and you guys know this, as I'm sure I've alluded to this in previous episodes, Sopranos is my favorite TV show of all time.
Yeah.
Now, I will praise that show and I will recommend it until my last day on this planet. However, I do admit and I do acknowledge that even that show, and I hold that show in such high regard, even that show had its moments where it was dropping in quality. It had its slow moments and it had its moments where I thought, this is not as good as what's come before it. But has that stopped me from going back and rewatching it over the years? No. So I think that the way that I felt after the final season of Game of Thrones, and admittedly, probably eventually Walking Dead as well, I will go back and rewatch these things and I will enjoy them because at the end of the day, they are enjoyable to watch and they are good shows in their own right as well, I suppose. So Game of Thrones, absolutely, I'll rewatch it eventually. And absolutely, I loved it while it was on. Final season disappointed me, but at the end of the day, I have to acknowledge that Game of Thrones is ingrained in TV history as one of the best shows ever made.
Yeah, both made really good points, but as we all know, Game of Thrones is such a wide topic that it is hard to cover it all in one episode. So we'll hopefully revisit it in a future episode. But for now, from all of us here at the Real Chat, from myself, Neil, Craig, and Andrew, have a good evening.
Or any other time of day.
Or any other time of day. Yeah. I think I'm going to be fired from hosting duties.
Absolutely not, Neil. You've done a fantastic job. But
yes.
Anyway, yes. Good day to you folks.
Yeah, right. Catch you guys later.
Bye, guys.
And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That'll be a massive help. Thanks for listening.
Of course. And remember one thing, the Lannisters send their regards.